BlackRock, one of the most powerful companies in the world, just struck a deal with the president of Ukraine. What is the deal? To have BlackRock reconstruct Ukraine after the war. How noble, right? Your tax dollars get sent to Ukraine, a good chunk of your money goes right back into America's military-industrial complex in the form of weapons and equipment, and the other chunk of your money is going to be sent to BlackRock to help Ukraine rebuild. Neat, right? The money went out of your pocket and then right back into the pockets of America's elite, with barely any of it actually reaching the Ukrainian people. But I'm sure that BlackRock doesn't have any ulterior motives, right? Let me explain. So you're BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, and you spent the last few decades of your life building BlackRock into the world's largest asset manager, an investment company responsible for around $10 trillion. $10 trillion! BlackRock has its tentacles in literally every aspect of your life. And you got to $10 trillion not by doing charity work, not by donating money to poor countries out of the kindness of your heart. No, you got to the top of the investment world by being as coldly calculated with your investments as possible. Because as any good investor knows, investing is simply a game of who can best take their emotions out of the equation. Any emotion and you lose money, which means BlackRock is not in the charity business. When you as BlackRock invest money, you expect to see a return. And in the case of Ukraine, you projected that you're gonna make returns on Ukraine so high that you just can't resist. The problem with trying to strike a deal with Ukraine is off limits. The federal government has its hands all over it. You can't just simply fly over to Ukraine on your own and make a deal without the US government's blessing. You would be going behind the government's back. You gotta work alongside the gatekeeper, not bribe. But luckily, BlackRock already has very deep ties with the US government. Back during the 2008 financial meltdown, when the government had to bail out too big to fail banks and corporations, who do you think they called to analyze and clean up the mess? BlackRock. BlackRock was awarded these key government contracts to help with the meltdown with no competitive bidding while being enveloped in secrecy. Basically, you, Larry Fink, a Wall Street elite, was hired to bail out other Wall Street elites who you just so happened to be one of the largest shareholders in. Clever, right? You and your friends who you're invested in created the mess and got rich off of it. The government then pays you money to clean up the mess, and by cleaning up the mess and bailing out your friends, you save your investments. And no one is the wiser. And the same thing happened during the great COVID market crash.
Just getting word from the Federal Reserve, and this might be boosting the markets even more this afternoon. They are talking about the details of their corporate bond purchases.
The Fed today going where no Federal Reserve has gone before, scheduled this morning to have begun the corporate bond buying program.
Start off with this bombshell announcement from the Federal Reserve, Dave, not just buying treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, but also buying corporate bond ETFs. That was a surprise.
Federal Reserve and their latest action to get into the bond market in a more concrete fashion. They're working with BlackRock.
America's money printer needed to bail out too big to fail corporations by buying their corporate bonds. But that's a big, complex job. Who are we gonna hire to manage all of that? BlackRock. BlackRock was hired again to bail out the same corporations that they were heavily invested in. So as you can see, you, Larry Fink, are a financial wizard. A financial wizard at the art of bridging the gap between big finance and big government. And if you're gonna get in on this Ukraine alpha, you're gonna need to apply some of that same magic touch here. The Ukraine war is a complex situation. President Biden doesn't have all the answers. He has to rely on advisors to suggest the best course of action to take. Which is why you gotta get a man on the inside to be one of those advisors. And you have the perfect man for the job. A guy named Eric von Nostrand, the head of research for multi-asset strategies and sustainable investments at BlackRock. Sustainable investments like Ukraine. All you gotta do is get him on the inside, which should be simple given your connections. And boom, in August 2022, Eric von Nostrand left BlackRock to become a senior advisor for the Biden administration on economic issues related to, what do you know, Russia and Ukraine. And his task was simple. The government would confide in him when it comes to questions like, how long should we support the war before we move on to the next phase? What would be the best way for America to help, say, reconstruct Ukraine? And confide in him they did. Luckily, he had the perfect solution to all their problems, a little-known company named BlackRock. even if the war in Ukraine comes to an end in the next few months, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for Ukraine from there. Because once the war ends, it's not like Ukraine can just immediately go back to normal again. No, Ukraine has taken a lot of damage, which means Ukraine will have a lot of rebuilding to do. Rebuilding that's gonna cost a very pretty penny. In September 2022, after a counteroffensive by Ukraine, Russia ramped up attacks, specifically aimed at Ukraine's population and critical infrastructure. How much was damaged in total is still hard to determine, but estimates say up to 40% of all housing and half of all of Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been completely destroyed, which means as of right now, it will cost Ukraine between $100 and $750 billion to rebuild the country and its economy, if the war ended today. However, if the war lasts just a few more months or years, rebuilding Ukraine will cost upwards of $1 trillion or more. $1 trillion that Ukraine certainly does not have. In fact, not even America has $1 trillion in reserves for an emergency like this. So if America doesn't have $1 trillion, there is no way that Ukraine will ever be able to get back on its feet alone. On top of that $1 trillion, Ukraine still has a bunch of debt they have not paid off, $54 billion to be exact, to which they've already paid $7.3 billion in debt repayments in 2022 alone. And who do they owe this money to? Why, the IMF, World Bank, the European Investment Bank, and Western banks. So the question remains, how on earth is Ukraine gonna be able to afford upwards of $1 trillion in repairs and all the debt they have? The answer? BlackRock. Today's video sponsor, the company that's gonna rebuild Ukraine. All you gotta do, President Zelensky, is sign the dotted line right here, and BlackRock will take care of all your worries. Just think of how much of a hero you'll be after you've not only won the war, but when you've got your economy back up and running. People are really gonna be kissing your feet after that. And in September 2022, just literally 1 month after you got your man on the inside of the Biden administration, you finally got such a meeting. In September 2022, BlackRock finally got their meeting with President Zelensky. The agenda? Quote, how to revive the country's shattered economy by attracting public and private investment, end quotes. The two of you talked about how BlackRock could provide, quote, pro bono advice to the Ukrainian government, end quotes, to set up a reconstruction fund. After the meeting, Zelensky said in a statement, quote, we've shown that we know how to win on the battlefield. Another important task for us is to achieve victories in the economy as well, and to be an attractive country for investors, end quotes. An attractive country for investors. There. Now Zelensky is speaking America's language. This is great progress for you, but giant deals like this are never closed in the first meeting. It's a long sales process. You gotta wine and dine the prospect. You gotta give them some value first, show them your worth first. So that's exactly what you did. It would take another 2 months after that first meeting for something to come into fruition. In November 2022, Ukraine and BlackRock signed a memorandum of understanding for BlackRock to be the one to coordinate investment in rebuilding Ukraine. Translated from Newspeak, BlackRock was now approved to be the one that helps Ukraine raise a bunch of money for the reconstruction of Ukraine from both public and private investors. Which means once the war is finally over, the floodgates to Ukraine for the West will be blown right open. The US government can start giving even more money to Ukraine in the name of reconstruction. US construction companies can move in to start rebuilding all the critical infrastructure and housing. Other US corporations like maybe oil and gas companies can start moving in to do business. While American bankers and financiers can start swooping up large swaths of the Ukrainian economy at fire sale prices, while giving them more loans. Basically, once the war is over, Ukraine will simply turn into another asset on the West's balance sheet. How do we know this is what the American oligarchy is up to? It's because almost this exact scenario has played out before. A country poses a threat to American interests, so America ravages it with war, and once the war is over and the country is left in ruins, that's when America sends in one of its corporate giants to help reconstruct and plunder the country. Except the last time this happened, instead of Ukraine, it was a little-known country named Iraq. And the corporation America sent in that time to do their bidding? Why, it was none other than Vice President Dick Cheney's very own company, Halliburton.
Halliburton is accused of hundreds of millions of dollars in improper charges.
Pentagon auditors have found potential overcharges of $61 million.
Now the numbers are apparently even larger than previously thought.
Halliburton's unreasonable and unsupported bills exceed $1 billion.
Several government agencies are currently investigating if Halliburton overcharged for work already completed in Iraq.
Iraqis are looking to rebuild every sector of their economy.
It is reportedly not a coincidence that Vice President Dick Cheney's old company got a huge contract to help rebuild Iraq.
Reconstruction effort here in Iraq is expected to cost the U.S. taxpayers more than $18 billion before the end. But some unscrupulous American businessmen have seen this as their ticket to get rich quick.
Feeding the troops. The Pentagon has found some serious problems with Halliburton's work on that contract as well.
Pentagon auditors found that a Halliburton contract to provide food and housing for American troops had a staggering $1.8 billion in unsupported costs.
It was nothing but the money. There's no duty, honor, country among anyone at Halliburton KBR.
And so it's time for the United States to start thinking of Iraq as a business opportunity.
And we're gonna expose all of it in part 2, so make sure you subscribe. What's happening right now with Ukraine, BlackRock, and the American oligarchy is nothing new. This is how America has went about colonizing the world since the end of World War II. You enslave a country in debt, if you don't succeed you send in the military, and once you do have the country enslaved, American corporations are then free to go in and exploit that slave labor. And after years of researching these videos, I realized that this is a secret that those in power have tried very hard to keep under wraps. Financial slave labor is the key to everything. The most powerful people and organizations in the world got to where they're at by mastering this game of financial slavery. And if you want to amass money and power, you too have to master the game of financial slavery. That's why when I realized all of this, I knew I had to share it with you guys. So I put all my findings into my greatest body of work yet, Financial Slavery Masterclass. 20 plus lessons all narrated by me in the same documentary style format you've come to love. All centered around teaching you the secret and how you can use it to get more money and power. And people have been loving it. Watch the first lesson of the masterclass for free right now with the link below, and once you buy, you can also get around $100 for every person you refer to the masterclass, plus step-by-step instructions on how to post TikTok clips of our videos to go viral and get more sales. Click the link below to join now.